Hey, I haven't talked about Pokemon in a while. Why don't I do that? When I last left off, Ash, May, and co were just over halfway through the Hoenn region, and while there were plenty of episodes to like, it felt as though things were slowing down and getting soft, especially as Advanced Challenge wore on. But I've heard that the speed and quality pick up again somewhat for the rest of the saga, and that the following Battle Frontier is one of their quickest and most satisfying arcs yet. So I was cautiously excited to see where the story went next. I've committed myself to watching through this series and the next, and I haven't yet given up the hope or the dream. This video will cover seasons 8 and 9 of the English dub, Advanced Battle and Battle Frontier. Trust me, these were some of the most important years of the dub and how it changed. But what was going on with the games around this time? While not the cultural phenomenon it was 5 years earlier, Pokemon was still going steady through the mid-2000s. The original games were remastered for the Game Boy Advance in 2004, Ruby and Sapphire were given their own follow-up, Pokemon Emerald, later on, and the spin-offs were still plentiful. Unlike with the second generation, fans were given a steady stream of games to keep them busy. As a matter of fact, Generation 3 is one of the only eras to last 4 years. Every other one besides the fourth has lasted 3 years. This came with the benefit of giving the new regions and mechanics more time to get fleshed out, but also the consequence of getting a bit more stagnant. This wasn't a big problem for Gen 3 in Japan, since Ruby and Sapphire only released 1 year after the Game Boy Advance over there, but in the United States, they were released 1 year before the Nintendo DS. It must have been weird having the current generation of Pokemon belong to the previous generation's hardware for most of its run. And I mainly bring this up because the dub seasons were still branded as Advanced, even after it became a play on obsolete hardware. This is really pedantic, it has the least impact on the quality of the franchise of anything else happening around this time. I just wanted to bring up the historical context of these seasons. I guess the big elephant in the room you all want me to bring up was the controversy surrounding Shaking Island Battle, an episode that was shelved and got the move Earthquake blacklisted from the anime because of a recent earthquake in Chuetsu. It seems way too late to bring it back out of the vaults, plus Japan's prone to earthquakes anyway, so while it's sad if we don't know if it would have been fun, I completely understand why it's probably gone for good. But let's see what's going on with the remaining 100 episodes that made it to air. Here we go.
I'm not a monster, Nurse Joy. I'm Ash from Pallet-Town.
When we last left off, Ash, Pikachu, May, Max, and Brock were deep in the Hoenn region, on the lookout for gyms and contests for Ash and May to respectively participate in. Their teams have gotten stronger over the course of their journeys through Hoenn, but they've still got a long way to go before they can be Pokemon Masters. In Ash's case, while the initial promise of him being the very best like no one ever was is looking less attainable, he's still making great progress for right here, right now. The Hoenn Grand Festival and Evergrande Conference approach gradually, with their sets of rivals getting bigger and more competitive as well. This is my 5th Pokemon anime video, you know how the stories are told at this point. There's a reason why I was worn out by the formula by the end of Season 7. It's meant to be watched at a much slower pace over longer periods of time than I tend to give it, but were they able to regain my interest? Surely the characters have to be learning new things this far into the show. Ash and Pikachu are still changing at the pace of erosion. I brought up in my last video that the advanced writers put more emphasis on Ash learning to be a more involved trainer, putting more time and energy into training his individual Pokemon, and compensated by making his brashness and competitive streak more pronounced than ever. As the Hoenn arc has gone on, he's mellowed out a little, feeling more in control of both his team and emotions. But Pikachu hasn't changed at all. I don't expect him to, he's still just meant to be adorable and sometimes a good partner in battles. After all these years, he's remained the face of Pokemon for a reason. They've turned him very safe and cutesy-wootsy over time, despite his contributions to some battles. May is still treated by the narrative like a second main character, going on her own journeys and learning at her own pace. Her stories and battles still don't have the intensity of Ash's, but I don't think they needed to. I still hoped they'd explore her relationship with the Pokemon world in better detail, and was kind of disappointed by the end. I like her as a character, I'll explain what I mean by that later. Max is still there to be more of a youngster, and I'm thankful they toned down his bratty tendencies over time. He has more to do and learn, which is nice to see. I can't say the same for Brock though, whose spotlights are getting fewer and further apart, and he doesn't have much of a use to the group anymore. It's a shame, he used to be one of my favorite parts of the anime, but he's becoming less vital and fresh by the episode. Team Rocket are still floating around as old reliables, but they're continuing to evolve with the tone of the show. Their status as the butt of the joke is almost all they have going for them now, especially on the business side. We know enough about their dynamic with the Team Rocket organization to no longer see them as any sort of threat. Their personal plotlines are also getting less frequent, but there's a pleasant surprise here and there. Not all is lost. The new age of rivals for Ash and May are a bit mixed, honestly. Drew's still around, basically being a calmer Gary for May, but now that I've seen all his episodes, I can better understand what they were going for. It makes sense why he gradually became nicer towards May. They didn't want a villain. That's what Harley's for. A grown man with a short temper developing a hatred for May as soon as they meet. I can understand the appeal of a rival this cartoonishly angry, but he really wasn't that fun for me. We don't even get a joke of a reason for his behavior until several months after his introduction, and I think he was let off the hook for a lot of underhanded things he did over time. Another rival I wasn't so keen on was Morrison, who quickly becomes a friend of Ash's in spite of his simple, hot-headed approach to battling. That isn't the problem, it's his voice. No disrespect to Mike Pollock, but he was given pretty bad direction for Morrison, only being able to make him come off as a blithering goofball when that wasn't the intention of the character. The dub wrecked him for me, simple as that. As for the gang back in Kanto, Professor Oak, Gary, Misty, Tracy, and Dahlia, because Ash returns home twice in this run, we get a little more of them than I was expecting. Their main function seems to just be to remind the viewers that they're here, and not everything from the classic run was trashed. They're given just enough time to do this, and I can imagine these episodes got more viewers than usual, from older fans eager to see them again. The judges at the Pokémon contests are also starting to become familiar faces. What can get you more psyched for the contest of a lifetime than Mr. Tsukizo? One of the weirder additions to the cast around this time was Scott, this soft-speaking guy who guides Ash through the battle frontier, because it's just that prestigious of a tournament. That's his only real function. He's a pretty mysterious figure compared to the rest of the cast, but reviving a little mystery 8 or 9 years into the show can't be a bad thing. As for the main troop's Pokémon, they're okay. Ash's Sceptile didn't turn out to be as interesting as I'd hoped. He had a lot of potential back as a Trico, but was eventually usurped by Charizard's surprise return. I've learned to like this guy, but man can he be a crutch. May's Blaziken lost a lot of his cutesy charm as he evolved, but I like to think of him as symbolizing May's growth as a trainer. He literally evolves within the last couple episodes of the saga. The others are one-trick ponies that don't try to be anything more or less than they appear. Ash's Torkoal remains a crybaby, his Glalie remains a prankster, May's Squirtle remains a toddler, etc. The roster overall is decent. Certain characters have outstayed their welcome, but there's an air of reliability to the mainstays that I think was important in keeping interest in the anime as it advanced through the mid-2000s. Advanced Battle has one of the best intros for the anime so far in the form of Unbeatable. It won't replace the spot in my heart for Born to be a Winner, but it's a good sign of things to come. Sure enough, I ended up enjoying Advanced Battle quite a bit more than Advanced Challenge, and I wouldn't say it's just because I took a break beforehand. There is so much less padding this year, it's insane. When you look at the number of gym battles and contests, that might seem confusing. After all, Ash and May still only have 3 victories respectively, but with the tournaments in the picture, the action's a lot higher energy. The stakes have risen a little, so you're instinctively asked to care more about the battles leading up to and at these tournaments. It kinda helps that the Team Aqua and Magma conflict reaches its climax pretty early into the season. It was something that was slowly building up, and kind of had to end early to put more emphasis on the battles and tournaments. Things were getting very busy, and something had to get wrapped up quickly. I just wished it was May's rivalry with Harley, as soon as it was introduced. The thing is, once the Evergrande conference wraps up, it's June 2005 and there's still months to go before the next season. It wasn't out of the ordinary for the Battle Frontier arc to start before its season had begun. Going by the syndication order, a lot of story arcs had started several episodes into the run. Ash and Co didn't go to the Orange Islands until halfway through the 1999 to 2000 season, for example. The thing is, the Battle Frontier arc blurs the line between a filler arc and canon to the games. Instead of being part of a small island like in Pokémon Emerald, it's a secret organization back in Kanto, so you don't see many Johto or Hoenn native Pokémon anymore. I guess this was done to cross-promote Fire Red and Leaf Green, which being remakes of the Gen 1 games was set exclusively in Kanto, or that each region up to that point had about 3 seasons dedicated to exploration, or to avoid the padding problem that plagued Johto. As a matter of fact, Battle Frontier is one of the shortest arcs yet. It's the So we continue on through Kanto and...
Oh man, we're stuck now.
And now that the sun's gone down, it's getting pretty cold too.
Hey, guys, are you feeling okay? You sound a little different. So do Team Rocket, and all the Pokémon, and the rivals.
As Ash continues his quest to become master of the battle frontier...
Wait, the old narrator is back? What's going on? Yes, we've hit this point in the dub, the switch over from 4Kids to the Pokémon Company at the start of Season 9. From what I know, the recently formed Pokémon Company was created to manage the enormous Pokémon brand natively and overseas, taking some of the pressure off Game Freak and Nintendo's shoulders. This happened close to the expiration of 4Kids' contract to dub the Pokémon anime on New Year's Eve 2005, and instead of renewing it, simply let the Pokémon Company take over operations at a cheaper cost. But because most of the voice actors for the anime, notably mainstays Veronica Taylor, Rachel Lillis, Eric Stewart, and Maddie Blaustein, were under contract to only perform for 4Kids, and couldn't re-audition for the new season, the Pokémon Company hired soundalikes, with far less than 400 episodes of experience to get into the roles. This was a really frustrating period in the history of the anime, especially for die-hard fans who considered the classic VAs irreplaceable. You can throw a lot of crap at 4Kids Entertainment for the changes they made to the animes they acquired, and Pokémon was never exempt from this. Hamming up dialogue, censoring any violence or dark themes, Americanizing the productions in the weirdest and most patronizing ways, using Comic Sans, but when you watch dozens and dozens of hours of these translation flaws and OTT performances, you get used to them. Any sudden shift to a different company is going to be distracting or even make you want to quit the show. I don't harbor any ill will to the new voice actors, they had already improved by the end of Season 9, but a lot of the charm of the series was lost or altered. The tone and presentation have stayed largely the same, but the writing hasn't. It feels like an imitation, but with time, experience, and even the rehiring of some older actors, I can only hope to see it become a better imitation. As I was saying, the battle frontier is pretty quick, going straight from Johto and Hoenn, which took years to complete. It's beautiful seeing the story go at a pace a snail wouldn't be bored by. 2 journeys and tournaments over the span of about 60 episodes, still a big time sink, but far less so than before. This benefit would have been compounded if you watched the season in America as it aired, as the gap between the Japanese and American premieres gradually receded from about a year to 6 months. This coincided with a channel hop from Kids WB to Cartoon Network, which was already their secondary home for a couple years, but would now show the new episodes all the way up to Sun and Moon when the rights were acquired to Disney XD. The dub is weird and the sky is blue. Anyway, there's an actual story this season to talk about, so how about I talk about it? 6 Frontier Brain battles, 4 contests, and the Kanto Grand Festival. There's a lot to look forward to, and while not all of these events are a home run in execution, you're in the right place if you want things to go at a pace resembling Indigo League. Heck, it's even faster. Best of all, it doesn't come at the cost of the storytelling. The required story beats still happen, like Ash reuniting with his old Pokémon again, and May and her rivals growing over the course of the festival, because most of the padding in this show usually comes from filler episodes spread over the first part of the journey. But during Battle Frontier, the writers had little time to waste, with Gen 4 only a year away. It was nice of them to have Ash win some sort of competition again, even if its nature is vastly different from the previous leagues. There's a reason when you hear about Ash's biggest victories, Orange Islands comes to mind way before Battle Frontier. But my only issue with it is that they brought back his older Pokémon for the final battle instead of truly showcasing and testing his new ones. It's great seeing the old pack again, but it would have been better if this era was rounded out by the selling point of Gen 3, just saying. May's tournament is also interesting and has compelling battles, but there were a few problems that simply come from the fact I've seen so many tournaments at this point. We were introduced to Soledad, a nice character that suffers from Richie syndrome. We kinda know she's gonna beat May regardless. It was cool seeing Drew get fired up and cool down, becoming good friends with May by the end, but I think Harley was left off the hook, being redeemed too easily. That isn't a problem with the pacing, more so with how much they let him get away with before turning over a new leaf. So some good and bad things about the storytelling are more or less the same as from the Hoenn arc, and Johto, and the Orange Islands, and Kanto. But what's different? Well, simply by being a 9-year-old cartoon, the animation is continuing to evolve. While the battles have remained about the same since Hoenn, they've started adding more CGI particles, I guess to make the presentation more lavish, and the line art has noticeably gotten thinner. Early on in the switch to digital ink and paint, they tried to keep looking like the old style, but they'd long since transitioned, so it makes sense why they'd want to develop the presentation further. But did this lead to better episodes? Let's find out. Homer's Where the Start Is was a nice way to bring some closure to May and Max's travels. May for now, Max officially it seems. It was nowhere near as feelsy as Gotta Catch You Later, but I can only guess that's to illustrate how much better Ash is at saying goodbyes now. Time Warp Heals All Wounds was a fun little time travel romp. May and Meowth go back and help an old lady unite with her husband at a crucial point. It's sweet and sensitive and epic at the same time. A hurdle for Squirtle was a nice little victory for not just May, but her baby Squirtle too. I love Squirtle, or Squirtles now, so this was nice to see. Overjoyed was a fun Nurse Joy episode, depicting one that's a really good Pokemon trainer. I just like her enthusiasm, and it has a great theme that you can have a great job alongside ambitious passions. Channeling the Battle Zone is the one where May wins against Drew. It was all leading up to this, so it's vital viewing if you're a fan of May, Drew, or Gen 3 at large. 8 ain't enough as the end of Ash's journey to get the Hoenn badges, and it's quite a way to end things. The strategies are far more extravagant than previously, and Hoenn is a great gym leader to watch. Gathering the Gang of 4 and pace the final frontier didn't just make for a good battle, but they were downright rewarding to watch after so many years and all that time that had passed since the Silver Conference. I still think the Hoenn Pokemon could have been used in some way, but I'm ultimately fine with how things shook out. Deoxys Crisis is one of the rare times at this point that the gang meet a legendary Pokemon in the main anime. They do it all the time in the movies and specials, but here we have some heavier tension and more cinematic scenes. As you'll see, Max and Mysterious Pokemon are a good combination. The right place and the right mime gives off a nice sense of how far Ash has come across the first 8 seasons, who he's made friends with, what Pokemon he has, and sets up a trip back through Kanto pretty well. This is pretty much the only time they could have a full gang team up because after this, it would be way too crowded. Gaining Groudon and the Scuffle of Legends were a fun little duology that brought some sort of closure to the Team Aqua and Magma arc. Pikachu getting overpowered ties into the Premier and Watson battle from earlier and Hoenn as well, and while I'd say there was too much water, it's still a perfectly dramatic story. Sweet Baby James is a rare James Spotlight episode as he returns to his childhood home and has to give up his beloved Chimecho, and absolutely no disrespect to Eric Stewart's legendary performance, but I like how Billy Beach underplayed it a bit here, giving the situation more gravity and sentimentality. Dwyer Roltz is my favorite episode of the Advanced Generation, not because it gives Max a serious struggle to face, not because it adds growth to his character, and not even because of the drama, but because of the moment at the end where Roltz verbally thanks Max. It was utterly cheesy and hilarious, and I'll never forget the episode for that scene alone. But I'd like to forget these 8. 3 Jinx and a Baby is a Jinx episode, now with her slight redesign that's incredibly offensive to the California Raisins. Say what you want about Jinx, I think Smoochum is way uglier, so centering an entire story about one was a quick turnoff. Strategy tomorrow, comedy today came at an inopportune time, as the battle frontier was heating up. It's a comedy-focused episode where the jokes aren't particularly funny, even in a cheesy way like in the 4Kids days. Once in a More While was a pretty boring romance story for Brock's Lombre turned Ludicolo. It's not like it's going to matter that much to the Ludicolo after this, it's more about Brock projecting his romantic struggles onto his Pokemon. Harley Rides Again was probably the peak of my aggravation towards Harley. I wasn't happy with how he was allowed to win here, it made the battle feel less worthwhile honestly. What I did for Love was a pretty weak attempt at making Brock more relevant to the Advanced Generation, throwing him into a contest, and the way he fumbles his love interest is painfully predictable. He really thought Yuma would take him under her wing by beating her, get a load of this guy. Bless Is Morrison is one of 2 episodes that I think was largely screwed by the dub. I've already been over how Morrison was made way too foolish by the dub, so I won't go into detail.
Pasta la vista.
It was the last episode 4Kids ever touched, and it was a very disappointing way to bow out. Just this mundane domestic situation about a gym trainer who wants to be a chef. Just comparing the acting and presentation of their first episode to the last, it's strange. My least favorite episode of these seasons is Hooked on Onyx. Not that I have anything against the Pokemon at all, but this story is so boring. It's the epitome of filler, dropping you into a dull location and wasting half an hour of your time. So that's the Advanced Generation done and dusted. It definitely improved in the back half with better pacing, storytelling, and animation, but it's not the most surprising era really. The improvements it made over the original series are all well and good, but it didn't have as much wild experimentation or classic moments. I'm still willing to call it good, and May and Max grew on me, but give me the choice of which of these series I'd watch again, and I'd choose the original. Still, currently, Advanced Battle's holding strong in the middle of my overall ranking, with Battle Frontier in 3rd place. If it wasn't for the dub change, it would probably be 2nd. It's a very good season. Next year, I'll be joining Ash, Pikachu, and Aipom to Sinnoh for the 3rd and final classic anime arc I ever plan on covering. I'll try and savor every moment. Every moment. Goodbye for now.
Working together, scoring together, that's teamwork.